What is up, guys? Orca's here, and today we are reviewing the Bristol race, and what a race it was. As you've seen by the tire, or not tires. We're gonna be talking about tires a lot in this video, but as you can see by the title, this video is a lot about the tires. This was the most insane race I've ever seen based on tires. I mean, the most tire wear I've ever seen from a racetrack. I mean, Bristol was eating those freaking tires up like it was a 5-course meal or like a 5-star meal. Like, how? I mean, based on what I've seen, this was a lot like an old school NASCAR race, and I haven't watched many old school NASCAR races, but this is basically what it was like back in the day. This was a good old fashioned back in the day race, according to people that I've seen online. But in terms of new age, we haven't really seen much of this, where people had to, produce a lot of tire strategy or conserve a lot based on tires. So it was cool to see that. And of course, based on that, a lot of the older drivers had good finishes, except for a couple. But the top 3 drivers in this race were people that raced back in those days that did use a lot of tire strategy and had to conserve their tires and stuff. As you see, or as you probably know, Denny Hamlin won this race, and he's definitely a very experienced driver. He's in his 40s, so he's raced a long time. He's been racing since like the mid 2000s in the Cup Series, so he has a lot of experience with this style of racing. And they've been racing with the new gens for a long time, but back in the back of their mind, they know how to conserve tires better than a lot of the younger generation that kind of struggled a little bit. But Denny Hamlin won this race. He was so good going through traffic. There was a lot of close situations, but he was able to make it work. And yeah, Truex was ahead of him for a little bit in the last laps, but Denny Hamlin just maneuvered traffic a lot better than Truex did. They were the only 2 people really close to each other at the end, and Denny Hamlin got the edge over his teammate. But still a good finish for Martin Truex Jr. The other very experienced driver behind them was Brad Keselowski. Now, he was about 6 seconds behind them, but still, he was one of the only people still on the lead lap. So that tells you basically all you need to know. Brad Keselowski also had a very good race, and he was racing really well this whole race anyway. So you could tell he knew what he was doing basically the entire race. And yeah, 3rd place finish. I think he scored the most points in this race, so very good for him. Great race for Brad Keselowski. He's quickly moving up among some of my favorite drivers. I updated my driver ranking list a little bit. I'm not going to show you guys that maybe until mid-season or maybe regular season or even playoffs, but I've made a lot of changes on my NASCAR driver rankings based on how I like them. But anyway, enough with that. I'll just talk about the race in general, because honestly, stage 1 looked like it was like, based off stage 1 alone, it looked like this might have been close to Atlanta for best race of the year. Now, in my opinion, it slowed down a little bit, but it was still a very good race. Probably the 2nd best race this season, in my opinion, and a lot of people would agree with that, I feel like. But I would say it still was a little bit slow for my liking at times, but it was still not bad. It was still actually a pretty good race, all things considered. I mean, I'm putting it ahead of Daytona, and Daytona is normally one of the best races of the year. So, it's in good company, but I'll just say it wasn't, it wasn't anywhere near the level of Atlanta, in my opinion. And maybe that's just a new generation fan coming out of me. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree. Eric Estep, one of the most popular NASCAR YouTubers gave this a 100. So he thinks this is up there with Atlanta for like the best race of the year so far. Like right with Atlanta. So it's like, yeah, maybe a lot of older NASCAR fans would get a better kick out of this than me, but that's just kind of how it is. But I still like this race a lot. Ty Gibbs was, I'll get into the more statistics or whatever you call it, the plot or story of the race, I should say. Ty Gibbs was the clear favorite from the beginning. Denny Hamlin was there too, but it really did look like Ty Gibbs was going to win this race. Stage 1 and Stage 2 both won by Ty Gibbs, and he's just had a great season so far. He's clear. I said this on one of my stories, but he's clearly going to be in the playoffs this year. It's no question. He's definitely going to be in the playoffs this year. He has the highest average finish out of any driver as a sophomore in this series. That is crazy. Now, you never know. He might have a slip up, but I doubt it. I think he'll definitely get a win. He was this close to get the win. If it didn't come down to experience, I think he still would have won this race for sure. He was up there. He was in first until like around 90 or 80 laps to go or something, and then he fell back a little bit. Like, he was up there for the entire race. He dominated this race, but it just came down to experience at the end, where Denny and Martin Truex, with their experience and like knowledge, they just conserved their tires very well and just blasted through the pack after green flag stops and stuff. So it was basically that. But Stage 1, again, like I said, during Stage 1, this looked like it was going to be like one of the best short track races in the history of NASCAR. Like, they were racing so up close with each other. Like, there was no separation. They were all right next to each other. And then there was a caution, unfortunately, and after that, it really wasn't the same. But that little part of the race, I think it was like maybe 5 laps left to go in the stage for Stage 1. It was some of the best racing I've ever seen. Like, for a non-super speedway race, they were all so close to each other, and it was honestly a decently long green flag run. Like, it wasn't like they just got off a caution. No, it was like 20 laps or 30 laps after the last caution that they were running like that. It was crazy. And then, of course, there was a caution, and then Ty Gibbs won the first stage under caution, and that's just kind of how it went. And then Stage 2, same story. Still good racing after that, but just not as great in my opinion. The next great racing didn't come until, like I said, toward the Stage 3 green flag pit stops. That's when it started getting really interesting, and it was honestly really cool seeing Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex run through the lap traffic. Like, that racing was sick. Like, Denny Hamlin was 3 wide at times to try to get through the traffic. It was crazy to watch. And a ton of people ended up multiple laps down, not even just because of penalties or cautions. Like, I've never seen that in a Cup Series race. Like, I didn't mention this, but there were only 5 people on the lead lap. The last person on the lead lap was Kyle Larson. John Hunter Nemechek was like close behind Martin Truex Jr., who was only like a second behind Denny Hamlin a lap down. So he was the last person that went a lap down, and that was only like with 5 laps left to go or something. He was close to still being on the lead lap, but yeah, only 5 people on the lead lap, and Kyle Larson was one of them. So it was, again, great racing, like I've said. Definitely the best short track race I think I've ever watched, for sure. Way better than Phoenix last week. So that's definitely a positive. I'll talk about teams for a second, because you guys probably know, JGR dominated this race. I think they led like 380 something laps or something like that. It was complete domination by JGR. The Toyotas have never looked better, in my opinion. People were saying like, "Oh, Chevy's winning these last three races. Where's the other teams?" And bang, Toyota comes out with a blast. Mostly JGR, I will say. Christopher Bell won last week. And now Denny Hamlin wins this week with Martin Truex Jr. right behind him. And in stage 3, they were running 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., and Denny Hamlin were all running 1, 2, 3, 4 for a decent amount of laps. And it wasn't until, like, the inexperience and, not good enough tire conservation kind of caught up with Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs, and they went a little bit behind Truex and Hamlin. But it was crazy. Great racing from JGR. I want to give a shout out to Team Hendrick as well, because I didn't think they were going to have a good race. I think Byron and Elliott were in the top 10 for starting the race, and then Byron, he had the early caution, I'm pretty sure, with 20 laps into the race, and he was multiple laps down. He broke a toe link, ended up multiple laps down, still finished the race, but multiple laps down, unfortunate. And then Elliott and the others fell way behind. I thought it was over for them, but Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson ended up 4th and 5th on the lead lap, so good for them. I didn't expect that. I have no idea where Alex Bowman came from, but he ended up with a 4th place finish, so good for him. And then Chase Elliott also ended up 8th, so not bad finish for him as well. It's good to see Team Hendrick coming back up again. And then another team that did really well was RFK. Brad Keselowski, like I said, finished 3rd place. Tire conservation experience, great for him. But Chris Buescher also finished 7th, so right behind John Hunter Nemechek as the second person 1 lap down. So not a bad finish for him as well. And then Michael McDowell also finished 11th, so great for him. And then SHR, not bad either. Noah Gragson didn't have a great race. I'm not really sure what happened to him. I think he had some penalties, but other than that, I think he just got unlucky. He just needed to do better, but hopefully he'll bounce back. He had a great last 2 races, but just happens. But like I said, SHR, not bad. Josh Berry, he was in the front row, ends up 12th. Chase Briscoe was in the top 10 for starting position as well, finishes 13th. And then Preece, right behind them, finishes 14th. So great, not bad races from them. Just would have liked to see Noah Gragson up there with them as well. But sometimes you can't have it your way. But with that being said, I'll get to all the other drivers. I talked about the top 10 a good amount, so I'll just skip them. And then I talked about McDowell. Great solid race from him. Was up front basically the entire day. He was in the 20th spots for a little bit, but he was in the top 10 for starting position and finished just outside the top 10. So great race for McDowell. He's racing really consistent. And I hope he continues to. We got a race or a road course next week, so I'm hoping he does good at the road course. Some of his favorite races and what he's had a lot of experience in. So I hope to see him have a good race next week. But other than that, Ross Chastain finishes 15th. He was up there a little bit, not bad for him. Ryan Blaney kind of struggled this race. He was in the top 10 for a little bit, but you can tell he wasn't having it this race. Struggled a little bit. He was in the 20th spots for a good amount of this race. Still ends up 16th. Not terrible, but, for a champion, it was kind of a struggle. Justin Haley was racing really good. He was in the top 10 for a good amount of this race as well, but then the tire wear caught up with him, ended up 17th. Tied for the best finish at Bristol, I believe. I'm pretty sure they said Rick Rick Ware Racing's best finish at Bristol is 17th, and he got 17th again, so good for him. Daniel Suarez finishes 18th. Kaz Gralla finishes 19th. He also had a really good race. He was racing in the top 10, so good race for him, all things considered. Eric Jones gets 20th. Decently worse than his teammate, but hopefully he'll do better. Corey LaJoie, 21st. Joey Logano struggles again, 22nd for Joey. He's had a struggle, but we gotta wait and see if he'll catch up. But it's not been good for Joey Logano. It also hasn't been good for RCR. Kyle Busch was involved with a lot of the cautions this race and had a really bad pit stop on one of his pit stops. It was really not good at all. They didn't get the tire on, and he almost drove off and freaking pile drove one of his own pit stop team members. They got to get together. 25th place for Kyle Busch. But before that, Austin Dillon finished right in front of him in 24th, and AJ Allmendinger finished 23rd. Todd Gilliland was running pretty decently, but the inexperience caught up with him, ends up 26th, unfortunate. Carson Hocevar and Daniel Hemrick finished 27th and 28th, unfortunate for them. Just the inexperience with a lot of these newer drivers really caught up with them. Bubba Wallace Jr., though, he was in the top 15 for a good amount of this race, ended up 29th. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe he was involved in one of the cautions, got some damage. I'm not sure, but not a great race for Bubba Wallace. Tyler Reddick was involved in a caution. For one of the cautions, it was a caution before his caution. He decided to stay out for some reason. I'm not sure why. And then as soon as he stayed out, Josh Berry just pile drove him and ended up spinning and got some damage. I'm pretty sure Zane Smith ran into him, and that caused more damage. So he finished multiple laps down, even without the end of the race being a factor. Austin Cindric gets 31st, Harrison Burton 32nd. Those are expected. Honestly, inexperienced drivers, not great drivers at all, so not surprised to see them here. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., though, he was involved with some cautions as well. Got spun and got hit, so unfortunate for him. Noah Gragson, 34th. Yeah, just not good race from Noah Gragson. Hopefully he bounces back. William Byron was involved with the first caution, had the broken toe link, and was never the same, finished multiple laps down. And then Zane Smith, after that hit with Tyler Reddick and then more stuff, ended up DNFing. Very bad start for Zane Smith's career. I'm glad I didn't pick him as the rookie of the year, because it has not been going good for Zane Smith at all. Not good at all. But with that being said, that's all the drivers and their finishes. I really like this race, like I said. I think I've been kind of more convinced to rank this higher. Originally, I had it at an 8 out of 10, but after hearing conversations and hearing the strategies and how people like this race, I'm going to move it up to an 8.4 out of 10. So I give this race an A-. I would say this is the second best race of the year. Daytona 500 just right behind it. And honestly, a very good short track race. I never thought I would say it this year, but this was a really good short track race. A- for this race for sure. Not as high as a lot of people would give it, like Eric Estep, who gave it a 10, but I still thoroughly enjoyed this, and I wish short tracks were more like this. After that Phoenix race, man, this was really something special. So that being said, I'll give this out to you guys, and I'll see you guys for COTA next week. Road course race. Very excited for that race. And yeah, we'll see you then.